At a corporate gala, a single father in a waiter's uniform extended his hand and was told, "I don't dance with staff." Minutes later, when the lights went out and panic erupted, he was the only one who knew how to save them. He was Leo Vance, a former Special Forces medic working nights to support his young daughter. She was Evelyn Thorne, a billionaire CEO who built an empire from nothing. Their story exposes the dangerous gap between social status and real capability. Because when the world goes dark, titles become meaningless and only one question remains: who is actually in charge? Leo Vance's life was governed by a single, unbreakable rule: never draw attention. After 8 years as a pararescue jumper, extracting wounded soldiers under fire, he left the military when his wife died, choosing a quiet life for his daughter Mia. His world was early mornings, school runs, and the night shift at the prestigious Orion Hotel, where the rich and powerful gathered. Evelyn Thorne's world operated on the opposite principle. Attention was currency. At 34, she had built Thorne Dynamics from a dorm room idea into a $12 billion defense contractor. Her leadership was legendary and feared. She demanded perfection, and her annual gala at the Orion was less a celebration than a strategic display of dominance. The night of the gala, everything was precision: 500 guests, a 12-piece orchestra, crystal chandeliers worth more than Leo's house. He moved through the crowd invisible, a tray balanced on his palm, mentally cataloging exits, crowd density, potential threats, old habits. His daughter's crayon drawing was folded in his vest pocket. She told him before he left, "Daddy, if you see someone lonely, you should ask them to dance." Evelyn stood at the center of the ballroom, a silhouette in red sequins. She had just closed a merger that morning. The champagne was flowing, but her smile was a calculated tool. Colleagues whispered she seemed strained, her eyes scanning the room as if looking for an adversary who hadn't arrived. The crisis began not with darkness but with a sound. A deep, resonant pop from the building's transformer vault, followed by the frantic whir of backup generators failing. Then, true blackness. Not a dimming but an absolute void. The music died mid-note. A second of stunned silence was shattered by a woman's scream. Panic is a chemical reaction. It floods the brain, shuts down logic. In the pitch dark, 500 people became a thrashing, blind organism. Glass shattered. Furniture overturned. The crowd surged toward the remembered location of the doors, creating a lethal crush. Leo froze for one calculated second. He dropped his tray, the sound muffled by chaos. His breathing slowed. Battlefield conditioning took over. The problem was not the dark. It was the herd. He needed to stop the momentum before people were trampled. He did not shout. He climbed onto a sturdy cocktail table, his voice cutting through the noise with calm, projected authority. "Everyone stop moving, right now." The command was so utterly out of place that it created a ripple of hesitation. "You are safe. The structure is intact. The biggest danger is you knocking each other down. I need you to listen." In the dark, a voice of certainty is a lifeline. The crowd stilled. "I am going to guide you out. If you can hear me, raise your hand." A few hands went up, invisible to all but him. "Good. Now reach out and gently take the shoulder of the person in front of you. Form a line. We are walking slowly to the East Service exit. I am at the front." Step by step, he talked them through it. A human chain formed in the darkness. He navigated by memory, avoiding overturned tables, leading them away from the main stampede. He reached a steel service door, felt for the crash bar, and shoved it open. Moonlight and cold air flooded in. 67 people filed out into the alley, unharmed. Back inside, the chaos was consolidating into pockets of distress. He heard a new sound: strained, wet breathing. Using the faint emergency glow from an exit sign, he found a man in a tuxedo, his face pale, clutching his chest. Classic heart attack symptoms, likely triggered by panic and stress. Leo lowered him to the floor, loosened his tie. "Sir, look at me. You're having a cardiac event. Help is coming. I need you to focus on breathing." He began CPR, his compressions precise and measured. 2 minutes later, as the man's color began to improve, a flicker of light returned. The backup power finally engaged, bathing the ruined ballroom in a dim, ghostly glow. Evelyn Thorne emerged from behind an overturned linen table. Her gown was torn, her perfect composure shattered. She saw the orderly line of guests in the alley. She saw the waiter performing flawless chest compressions, his face a mask of focused calm. She saw the security team, her own highly paid professionals, who had been useless, now gaping at this man who had done their job for them. And she remembered his face. From 30 minutes before the blackout, he had approached her, his hand extended, an earnest, unprofessional request on his lips. She had cut him off with 5 icy words. "I don't dance with staff." The humiliation she had delivered was now a mirror, reflecting her own powerlessness back at her. The social hierarchy she enforced had been rendered absurd. In the economy of crisis, his competence was the only currency that mattered. She watched as he confirmed the heart attack victim was stable, then stood, wiping his hands on his apron, looking around as if assessing what to fix next. Their eyes met across the littered ballroom. The distance between them was no longer just social. It was a chasm of proven capability. The silent question hung in the air, charged by the fatting adrenaline. Who was actually in charge? And as the sirens of the first responders finally wailed in the distance, Evelyn Thorne did something she had never done in her professional life. She began to walk toward him, her heels crunching on broken glass, the first words of a devastating apology forming on her tongue. But before she could speak, the head of event security, his face ashen, pushed through the crowd and grabbed Leo Vance by the arm. "The police are here. They need to speak with you. Right now." The police didn't want a statement. They wanted an explanation. In a secure conference room away from the chaos, 2 detectives faced Leo. "Mr. Vance, you led 67 people to safety, performed field-grade triage, and administered CPR with what the EMTs are calling textbook perfect form. Your hotel file says you're a night shift waiter. So, who are you really?" Leo gave the abbreviated truth: former pararescue, honorable discharge. He offered no details, his answers clipped. The detectives exchanged a look. One slid a tablet across the table. On it was a paused security feed from before the blackout, showing the moment Leo approached Evelyn Thorne, his hand extended. "Care to explain this interaction?" "I asked her to dance." "Why?" "My daughter thought she looked lonely." The detective leaned forward. "You realize how that looks? A low-level employee approaches the event's primary benefactor minutes before a catastrophic systems failure. A failure that, according to our initial sweep, was caused by a sophisticated cyber-physical attack on the building's management system. Not an accident. Sabotage." Leo's calm didn't falter, but a cold understanding settled in his gut. He was no longer a witness. He was a person of interest. "You think I had something to do with it?" "We think it's a remarkable coincidence. You're trained for chaos. Chaos happens. You become the hero. It's a classic play." "If I engineered a crisis," Leo said, his voice low, "why would I draw your attention by saving a heart attack victim? Why not just slip away?" The detective didn't have an answer. "Don't leave town." Outside, the pre-dawn air was electric with news vans. The story had already mutated online. Billionaire gala blackout, waiter hero or mastermind. Evelyn Thorne was surrounded by a phalanx of lawyers and public relations people, giving a tightly controlled press statement about resilience. Her eyes found Leo across the flashing cameras. The apology she'd meant to offer was buried under a mountain of new suspicion. Leo went home as the sun rose. His daughter, Mia, was still asleep. He stood in her doorway watching her, the fear finally hitting him. It wasn't fear of the police. It was fear of the spotlight. His carefully constructed invisible life was over. The online sleuths were already at work. By noon, a military history forum had unearthed a grainy photo of a para-rescue team in Afghanistan. One figure, face obscured, was circled. The username's comment read, Metal citation declassified last year. That's Leo Vance. Pulled 2 pilots from a burning wreck under sustained enemy fire. Silver Star. The narrative split into 2 competing legends. One, the sinister opportunist. The other, the hidden war hero. Evelyn Thorne watched this unfold from her 47th floor office. Her board was in an uproar. The stock price had dipped. The Thorne Gala blackout was a global headline, and the company's reputation for flawless security was in tatters. Her chief of security, a former Secret Service agent, placed a report on her desk. The forensic analysis is complete. The attack was highly targeted. They didn't just kill the lights. They disabled every redundant system, including the electromagnetic locks on the secure storage room on the 2nd floor. Evelyn looked up. What was in that room? The prototype, the one for the Department of Defense presentation next week. The room held the next generation of Thorne Dynamics, secured communications hardware, a device that could encrypt data across a battlefield. Its theft would be a catastrophic intellectual property loss, and the blackout had been the perfect smokescreen. The police think the waiter did it, the security chief said, skepticism in his voice. Evelyn stared at the report. She replayed the night in her mind, the calm voice in the dark, the efficient, life-saving actions. The man who acted not like a thief but like a guardian. A thief creates chaos to hide. A guardian contains chaos to protect. They're wrong, she said quietly. He wasn't creating a distraction. He was managing one. Driven by a debt she wouldn't acknowledge and a CEO's need to control the narrative, Evelyn did something unprecedented. She used a private channel to contact Leo. The message was simple. I believe the police are mistaken. I would like to meet. Discreetly. They met in a public park at dusk. Leo wore a hoodie, his posture tense. Evelyn, in jeans and a sweater, looked like a different person. The police suspect you because it's the easiest story, she began, no pleasantries. But the attack had a specific objective, the theft of a military prototype. You didn't take it. You were busy saving lives, but your skills, they make you an anomaly in their equation. I need you to become part of mine. Leo was wary. What's your equation? Finding who really did this. My security team is excellent at corporate espionage. Not this. This was a tactical military-style incursion. You understand how they think, how they move. I want to hire you as a consultant to review the security footage, the method, and tell me what my people are missing. Leo laughed, a short, humorless sound. You humiliate me in front of hundreds of people, and now you want to hire me. Evelyn didn't flinch. Yes, because I was wrong, and because 48 hours from now the board will vote to suspend me unless I can prove this wasn't a failure of my leadership. This isn't charity, it's mutual survival. Help me find the truth and I will make sure the truth about you is the one that sticks. The hero, not the suspect. He thought of Mia, of the police's lingering suspicion. He thought of the unseen enemy who had turned a roomful of people into pawns. A guardian's work wasn't done. Consultant only. I don't carry a gun. I don't go into the field. I look at your data and I tell you what I see. Agreed. Inside Thorne Dynamics' situation room, Leo was an alien presence. The security team eyed him with a mix of resentment and curiosity. Evelyn presented the data, network intrusion logs, physical access reports, the blueprints of the hotel. Leo moved to the maps. He didn't look at the digital screens first. He looked at the physical world, the service corridors, the load-bearing walls, the sightlines. They didn't come in through the front, he said after 20 minutes of silence. Your systems show a digital breach originating from a fake vendor profile. That's the misdirection. He pointed to a structural schematic. Here, the old boiler access tunnel. It was sealed in the 90s, but it runs directly under the secure storage room. A small, skilled team could have thermal cut through the floor from below, grabbed the prototype, and been gone before the lights even went out. The cyber attack was just to keep everyone looking up. The head of physical security blanched. That tunnel isn't on our schematics. It's on the original city architectural archives, Leo said. You defend what you know, they attack what you've forgotten. It was the first major pivot. The investigation swung from an inside job to a professional, external heist. Evelyn authorized a silent sweep of the tunnel. Forensics found trace evidence, specialized tool marks, fibers from high-end tactical gear, and a single, partial boot print that matched patterns used by certain European Special Forces units. The thief had a profile, but the why was still a mystery, until Leo, cross-referencing the prototype specifications with global defense contracts, found a link. A rival conglomerate, Ares Global, had lost a bid to Thorne Dynamics for that very duty contract 3 months prior. Their CEO had publicly vowed to win the next round by any means necessary. The pieces fit: motive, capability, method. Evelyn prepared to take the evidence to the FBI to clear her company and shift the investigation away from Leo. But as she drafted the disclosure, a new email arrived in her private, encrypted inbox. No subject. One line of text. You're looking in the wrong place. The weakness isn't your security, it's your conscience. Ask your hero about Operation Silent Nightfall. Evelyn didn't recognize the operation name. A classified search within her own company's limited military databases returned nothing. But the phrase had a profound effect on Leo. When she showed him the email, all the color drained from his face. The unshakable calm finally cracked, revealing a deep, old horror. "What is it?" Evelyn demanded. "What is Operation Silent Nightfall?" Leo looked at her, and for the first time she saw the man beneath the medic, the soldier beneath the father, a man haunted. "It's not something you can find in a database," he whispered. "It's something they buried, and if they're using that name, this wasn't about stealing a prototype." He met her eyes, the stakes violently recalibrated. "They weren't here for your technology, Evelyn. They were here for me." The name Operation Silent Nightfall was a ghost from a buried past. In a secure safe house with Evelyn as his only witness, Leo Vance began to speak. 3 years ago, my unit was sent to extract a high-value asset, a defector from a private military company called Ares Global. The mission was black. No records. Our call sign was Silent Nightfall. It went wrong. The defector was a former Ares Global Operations Director named Carl Reinhardt. He was offering evidence that Ares wasn't just a defense contractor. It was running unsanctioned, for-profit combat operations, selling destabilization as a service. Reinhardt had the financial ledgers, the satellite logs, the body counts. His extraction point was a warehouse in Estonia. "We got him out," Leo said, his voice flat. "But Ares had a contingency. They planted a secondary team not to retrieve him but to eliminate the entire chain of evidence, us included. Our exfil helicopter was targeted. It went down in a forest. Reinhardt was killed. 2 of my teammates were killed. I dragged the pilot from the wreckage. We evaded for 3 days before rescue." Evelyn listened, the corporate world of boardrooms and patents receding into a surreal distance. The evidence Reinhardt carried, what happened to it? "I had it, a sealed data drive. When we were recovered, I handed it to my commanding officer. I was told it would be delivered to the Pentagon Inspectors General. A week later, my CO was reassigned. A month later, the official report called the incident a training accident. The Ares Global contract with the Department of Defense was renewed the following quarter. The truth was clear. The evidence had been buried. The men who died were listed as killed in a training exercise. Leo, haunted and disillusioned, left the service soon after. He thought the secret had died with them. But the email proved someone knew, and that someone believed Leo might still have a copy of the data. "They think you have it," Evelyn concluded, her mind racing through the implications. The blackout, the theft, it was a 2-part operation. First, steal my prototype to cripple my bid and strengthen Ares's position. Second, use the chaos to flush you out, to see if you'd react, to see if you were still a threat. My gala wasn't just a target, it was bait. Leo nodded. The personal had become catastrophically strategic. He was no longer just a suspect or a consultant. He was the unresolved variable in a multi-billion-dollar covert war. And Evelyn's company was now collateral damage because she had stood in the same room with him. The next move was a brutal escalation. It didn't come through email. It came to Leo's phone, a video message sent from an untraceable number. It showed his daughter, Mia, sitting at their kitchen table after school eating an apple. The footage was taken that very afternoon. A synthesized voice spoke over the image. The child is a delightful variable, the data drive for her continued safety. You have 24 hours to signal compliance. Stand by the fountain in Capitol Park at noon tomorrow. Alone. Leo's world telescoped down to a single primal point. Every instinct screamed to run, to grab Mia and disappear. But he knew Ares's reach. They had found him once. They would again. Hiding was no longer an option. Only confrontation remained. He showed the video to Evelyn. Her face, usually a mask of controlled calculation, showed genuine fear. "We go to the FBI right now. This is kidnapping, terrorism." "And what happens when the FBI starts digging into Silent Nightfall?" Leo interrupted. "The official record says it doesn't exist. I become a conspiracy theorist. They'll tie me up in questions while Ares's people vanish, and they'll still have Mia as a lever." He took a breath, the soldier's calculus taking over. "They want a trade. A data drive I don't have for a daughter I can't lose, so we give them a trade, but on our terms." Evelyn stared at him. "What are you suggesting?" "You're a defense contractor. You build convincing prototypes. Can your people build a convincing data drive? One that looks authentic, that would pass a visual inspection, maybe even a basic plug-in check, but is really a tracker and a data siphon?" A slow, fierce understanding dawned in her eyes. "Yes, we can do that." "Then we don't just give them what they want," Leo said. "We give them a beacon straight back to their front door." The plan was audacious and fraught with risk. While Evelyn's tech team worked through the night fabricating the perfect decoy drive, Leo made his preparations. He wouldn't go to the meeting unarmed. His weapons wouldn't be guns, but knowledge. He memorized the blueprints of Capitol Park, the sightlines, the choke points, the civilian flow patterns at noon. Evelyn insisted on being part of it. "This is my fight too now. They used my event. They threatened a child to get to a man who works for me." She positioned herself in a rented office overlooking the park, a direct line to Leo's concealed earpiece, a team of her most trusted security analysts feeding her camera feeds. Noon arrived. The park was bustling with office workers. Leo stood by the fountain, a nondescript backpack at his feet, the decoy drive inside. He felt exposed, a target in a shooting gallery. The earpiece crackled. Evelyn's voice tight. "I have a visual on 4 potential observers. 2 on benches, 1 hot dog vendor, 1 with a book. They're good, professional." The contact wasn't a person. A drone, small and quiet, descended and hovered at chest level. A compartment opened. A synthesized voice issued from it. "Place the item, turn around. Walk north, do not look back." Leo placed the backpack in the compartment. The drone snapped shut and zipped away over the rooftops. He turned and walked, his heart hammering. In his ear, Evelyn was already coordinating. "Tracking signal is live and strong. Drone is moving east, heading into the old industrial district. We have it." They followed the signal to a seemingly abandoned textile mill. Evelyn's team had a satellite overview. Heat signatures showed at least 10 people inside. This was the nest. As they watched, the signal stopped moving. It was inside. Leo, from a surveillance van 3 blocks away, studied the feed. "It's not a permanent base. It's a staging area. They'll verify the drive quickly. When they find out it's fake, they'll scatter. We have to move now." Evelyn was already on the phone to a senior contact at the Department of Defense, leveraging every ounce of her credibility. "I have actionable intelligence on the theft of your prototype and a related national security threat. I need a joint tactical team right now. Use the Economic Espionage Act. Use anything. But get me people who can breach that building." The authorization came, but it was messy. It was a joint task force, FBI, Homeland Security, and a quiet detachment from the Pentagon's own security force. The raid was set for dawn. As the teams mobilized, the final, cruelest twist emerged. Evelyn's head of internal security approached her, his face grim. He had been running a parallel, silent audit of who knew about the prototype's exact location at the gala. The list was short, very short, and one name on the access log didn't fit: a junior IT administrator who had no business in the secure planning documents. "We pulled his comms," the security head said. "Encrypted, but we found the financial trail. He received 2 payments from a Cayman Islands shell company. One, a week before the gala. The second, larger one, was processed an hour ago." The mole hadn't just helped plan the heist. He was confirming the raid's timing. Ares knew they were coming. The factory wasn't a nest. It was another trap. Evelyn rushed to tell Leo, but it was too late. The assault teams were already in position. Over the tactical channel, they heard the breach command. Then, not the sound of gunfire, but a massive, concussive boom. The satellite feed showed a section of the factory roof blowing outward, not inward. Not an explosion meant to kill breachers, but a shaped charge for escape. "They're running," Leo shouted, watching heat signatures pour into a subterranean network, the city's old storm drain system. The teams were safe, but the prey was gone, and with them the decoy drive and any hope of tracing them. Back in the Situation Room, the mood was defeat. The operation was a failure. The authorities had nothing but an empty building. Ares had slipped the noose. Evelyn's board was in emergency session, her leadership hanging by a thread. Leo sat alone, staring at the map of the storm drains. They had lost. He had failed. Mia was still in danger, and he was out of moves. Then his phone buzzed. A new message. It was a photo, this time not of Mia, but of a digital fingerprint, a serial number from the decoy drive. The synthesized voice message followed. "A clever forgery. We are not amused. The child's safety window is now closed. You have forced our hand. The variable will be eliminated." The screen went dark. Leo's blood turned to ice. It was over. They were going to kill his daughter as a lesson. He had nothing left to bargain with, no plan, no time. He looked up, ready to descend into a despair he had never known, when Evelyn stormed into the room, her eyes blazing not with defeat, but with a furious, triumphant fire. She slammed a tablet down in front of him. "They think they won," she said, her voice shaking with adrenaline. "They think the drive was just a tracker. They're wrong." On the tablet was a complex data stream, a swirling mass of code and network addresses. The decoy wasn't just a tracker, Leo. It was a digital parasite. The moment they plugged it in to verify it, it didn't just send us a location. It started copying every piece of data on their local network and tunneling it back to me. While they were busy blowing holes in the roof and running, it was emptying their secrets. She zoomed in on one file. It was an operations ledger, dates, locations, payments, and targets. One future target was highlighted, scheduled for next week. The location was a private airfield. The objective, receipt and transfer of acquired prototype Phase 2. Ares hadn't just stolen the device. They were moving it. And now, Evelyn and Leo knew exactly when and where. The game wasn't over. The battle had just shifted to the one place Leo never wanted to return, the field. The stolen data gave them a time, a place, and a choice. Leo Vance looked at the airfield coordinates. Going there meant breaking every promise he'd made about leaving his old life behind. But it was the only path that led to Mia. He turned to Evelyn Thorne, the CEO who had once refused his hand, and said the words he never thought he'd say again. "I need a kit, and I'm going in." Evelyn didn't argue. She mobilized her resources with a wartime efficiency. Within an hour, Leo was in a private hangar across town, inspecting gear that hadn't been issued to him. A tactical vest, night vision, a secure radio, no firearm. He refused it. His weapon would be the element of surprise and the truth in the data they now possessed. The plan was intercept, not assault. The Ares team, confident after their escape, was scheduled to move the stolen Thorn prototype from a truck to a private jet at 3 a.m. at a remote, decommissioned airfield. Leo would infiltrate, confirm Mia's location if she was there, and plant evidence-tracking beacons. Evelyn, working with the federal authorities she had finally fully briefed using the stolen ledgers as leverage, would have a strike team ready to move in once the handoff was confirmed. But plans are promises the enemy hasn't agreed to keep. As Leo moved through the wooded perimeter of the airfield under the moonless sky, his thermal scope showed not the expected 6 men but 12. And they weren't relaxed. They were fortified, positioned in a defensive perimeter. The data had been a partial truth. Ares was expecting company. Leo radioed the warning. It's a hardened position. They're waiting for something or someone. Abort the intercept. Go straight to the takedown. Now. Before Evelyn could relay the command, new headlights pierced the darkness. A black sedan, not a truck, rolled onto the tarmac. A man in a suit got out. Even from 200 yards, Leo recognized him from corporate profiles. Alistair Kane, the ruthless chief operations officer of Ares Global. He hadn't come for a prototype. He'd come for a meeting. And from the other side of the jet, another figure was brought forward. Not Mia. It was the mole from Thorn Dynamics, his hands bound. Kane spoke, his voice carried on the wind as a faint murmur. A transaction was happening, but not the one they expected. Kane was taking possession of the trader, a cleanup operation. Then Kane gestured. A second car door opened. 2 men led out a small, defiant figure. Mia. She was there. Leo's breath caught. They had brought her not as leverage for a trade, but as a witness. To silence the traitor and to send a message to Leo that there were no lines they wouldn't cross. The calculus of the mission shattered. This was no longer about retrieval. It was about prevention. He watched in frozen horror as Kane drew a pistol, leveling it not at the mole but at Mia. A demonstration of commitment. A final, grotesque piece of theater. Every rule broke. Leo's promise to stay out of the field, his vow not to engage, evaporated. He didn't think. He moved. Silently, he closed half the distance, using the skeletal remains of an old fuel truck for cover. He was 60 yards away, too far for a safe takedown, too close to do nothing. He keyed his radio, his voice a whisper. Evelyn, they have Mia on the tarmac. Kane has a gun. The timeline just collapsed. I am engaging. Leo, wait for the team. They're 8 minutes out. She doesn't have 8 minutes. He needed a distraction. His eyes fell on the park jet's auxiliary power unit, a small, exposed generator. He picked up a heavy rock, took aim, and threw. It was a desperate, unlikely shot. The rock clanged against the metal housing, then tumbled into the moving fan blades. The result was instantaneous and catastrophic. A shower of sparks, a rending shriek of metal, and then a small, fuel-ignited fire erupted from the APU. The Ares team, disciplined but focused on the drama with Kane, spun toward the sudden noise and light. In that 3 seconds of redirected attention, Leo moved. He sprinted, not toward Mia, but toward the blind spot behind the jet's main landing gear. He was now 30 yards away, hidden in deep shadow. Kane, unnerved but in control, shouted orders. 2 men broke off to investigate the fire. He kept his gun on Mia. It seems we have a rodent in the grass, he announced loudly. Show yourself, Vance, or I paint the concrete with her. Leo had one chance. A gap in the men, a direct line to Kane, but it meant exposure. He took a breath, stepped into the light, and raised his empty hands. I'm here. Let her go. You want the data? I'll tell you where it is. Kane smiled, a predator's grin. The data is irrelevant. This was never about the drive. It was about sending a message. You don't leave Ares, you don't testify, and you certainly don't raise a new generation to ask questions. He began to squeeze the trigger, shifting his aim from Mia to Leo. But Leo wasn't looking at the gun. He was looking at Mia. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. His fierce, brave daughter, raised by a soldier, understood. As Kane's finger tightened, she didn't cower. She dropped straight down, a dead weight, yanking her captor's arm with a surprising jerk. The gunshot went wide, pinging off the jet's fuselage. In the echo of the shot, two things happened at once. The Federal strike team, hearing the gunfire, abandoned stealth. Their vehicles crashed through the perimeter fence, lights flashing, sirens screaming. And Leo charged. He covered the last 20 yards in a blur. He didn't go for the gun. He went for Kane's center of mass, tackling him with the full force of his momentum. They hit the concrete hard. The pistol skittered away. It was not a fair fight. Leo's combat training, fueled by paternal fury, was overwhelming. It was over in 15 seconds, with Kane pinned, disarmed, and gasping. He scooped Mia into his arms, holding her tight, moving them both behind the cover of the jet's wheel as the firefight erupted around them. Ares's men, caught between Leo and the advancing feds, were quickly subdued. The whole confrontation lasted less than 90 seconds. In the stunned silence that followed, littered with the crackle of radios and the moans of injured men, Evelyn's car sped onto the tarmac. She ran toward them, her composure gone, pure relief on her face. She saw Leo holding Mia, both safe, and the magnitude of what had almost happened hit her like a physical wave. The aftermath was a whirlwind of official business. Alistair Kane, the Thorn Dynamics mole, and the entire Ares team were taken into federal custody. The stolen prototype was recovered from the jet's cargo hold. The data from the parasite drive, combined with Kane's arrest, triggered multiple congressional investigations into Ares Global's contracts. For Leo, the personal resolution came the next morning. With the threat neutralized, the police formally cleared him of all suspicion. The narrative in the press permanently shifted from waiter suspect to decorated veteran saves daughter, exposes corruption. He was a hero again, but this time on his own terms. A week later, Evelyn Thorn requested a meeting, not in her office but at the Orion Hotel ballroom. It had been restored. The chandeliers gleamed. The memory of the darkness was just a ghost. She stood in the exact spot where she had rejected him. Leo stood before her, not in a waiter's uniform, but in a simple button-down shirt. "I owe you 2 apologies," she said, her voice quiet in the empty room. "The first is for my words that night. They were cruel and small and wrong. The second is for dragging you and your family into my war." Leo nodded slowly. "You gave me the tools to finish mine." "What will you do now?" she asked. "Be a father. Full-time. Maybe teach some community emergency response classes. The quiet life I wanted, but maybe without having to hide who I am anymore." Evelyn smiled, a genuine, uncalculated expression. Then she did something that surprised them both. She held out her hand, palm up, in invitation, not to a business deal, to the dance he had asked for a lifetime ago. "May I?" she asked. This time Leo took her hand. There was no music, just the quiet hum of the city beyond the windows. They moved in a slow, simple turn on the polished floor. The hierarchy of the gala was gone. In its place was a hard-won mutual respect. The guardian and the strategist, both having proven what they were made of. As they parted, Evelyn handed him a small, embossed card. It was not a business card. It was a founder's share certificate in a new corporate division. "Thorn Resilience Group," Leo read aloud. "A 50-50 partnership," Evelyn said. "You run it. We train corporate security teams, first responders, even school staff. We teach them what you know, how to lead in the dark, how to protect people when systems fail. No more waiting for heroes to show up. We make them." It was the final, surprising turn. Not a reward of money, but a sharing of purpose. Leo Vance, the man who never wanted attention, was being offered a platform to turn his hardest lessons into a shield for others. He looked from the certificate to Evelyn to the bright, empty ballroom. He thought of the darkness and the chain of people he had led through it. He thought of Mia, safe because he remembered how to fight. He nodded. "Okay," he said. Let's build something that matters. The story of Leo Vance and Evelyn Thorne is a blueprint for a psychological truth we often forget. Hierarchy is a story we agree to tell until the moment reality demands something else. The blackout didn't create a hero. It simply turned off the lights on everything that wasn't one. We build entire societies, companies, and social codes on the assumption that the person at the front of the room, the one with the title and the spotlight, is the most capable. But capability isn't a title. It's a quiet accumulation of knowledge, discipline, and the willingness to act when action is the only thing that matters. Leo carried his in a faded medical kit and in the muscle memory of 100 emergencies. Evelyn carried hers in boardrooms and balance sheets. The crisis proved that both were necessary, but only one was immediately life-saving. This is the enduring tension the tale exposes. The public humiliation, the cruel dismissal of "I don't dance with staff," was more than just rudeness. It was a ritual enforcement of a social order, a reminder of who was above and who was below. But rituals shatter against the rocks of genuine necessity. When the world went dark, the ritual became absurd. The only meaningful question was not, "What is your title?" but "What can you do?" Their partnership, the Thorne Resilience Group, is the lasting artifact of that lesson. It is the institutionalization of a hard-earned truth that the most valuable person in the room might be the one you've been trained to overlook. It is a commitment to seek out the quiet competence, the hidden skill sets, before the crisis forces them to the surface. They are not just training people in tactical medicine and crisis leadership. They are training organizations to see in the dark. For Leo, the journey was from invisible to indispensable, and back to a new kind of visibility, one he chooses. He trades the anonymity of the night shift for the purpose of the training room, turning the trauma of his past into a shield for others. For Evelyn, it was a shattering of arrogance and a rebuilding on a foundation of earned respect. She learned that true power isn't demonstrated by who you can reject, but by who you can recognize. So what remains when the music fades and the lights come back on? A simple, unsettling question. Look around your own world, your office, your community, your life. Who are the people whose value is hidden behind a uniform, a job title, a quiet demeanor? What capabilities lie dormant, waiting only for a moment of need to be revealed? And more importantly, what systems do you uphold that keep those capabilities in the shadows? The promise of this story is that sometimes the most profound revolutions begin not with a shout, but with a whispered command in the dark. And sometimes redemption is not a grand apology, but a silent dance in an empty ballroom, where the only thing that matters is the hand you're holding. Subscribe if you believe the most interesting person in the room is often the one you haven't met yet.